Somalia is set to today host its long-awaited presidential elections after a 15-month delay. The East African country will once again hold indirect elections. Initially, the country had planned to hold universal suffrage for the first time in 50 years, but this fell through due to the country's failure to provide a legal framework for constituencies and voting processes. This, of course, resulted in an indirect election where only the upper house senators and lower house MPs will jointly elect a president by secret ballot. There are a total of 39 presidential hopefuls, with only one of them being a woman. As a requirement, the candidates were to receive endorsement from at least 20 legislators, which is also the minimum amount of votes they would need to stay in the presidential race after the first round today. Now, for more on this, to speak to us on this matter is a Pan-African scholar at TUT and SARCHI Chair for Research and Innovation, Professor Mamo Muchi. Professor, thank you so much for your time and thank you for joining us. Firstly, let's talk about the fact that this is another indirect election and not universal suffrage. So we will not, in fact, be seeing one vote for every Somalian in this instance.
Yes, you are absolutely right. This is not... Somalia is still not a place for one person, one ballot, both ballot. That's not yet a system. There's a clan elders represent, their own the people who elected them, who selected them. I don't even call it election, selection, because we have this kind of situation. The system itself is a unique process. It's not a normal election process that you see here in South Africa or other places, or Botswana. So I think we have a very complicated system. The interesting question now is that if you have this kind of election where the clans, and the clans, not all the clans also have the same rights. There are 4 major clans that have more elders that represent them. And then the minority ones also have smaller numbers. So when you have a system like that, is it really a democratic process? Is the election really going to deliver something different, remove conflict, and create peace, security? It's a very challenging matter. So whether this election will make any difference when they also had previous elections, it's a very complicated situation that we have. I think what they need is really change the constitution and make the people to vote for those that will become, that will hold offices and be members of parliament and so on. Some system like that is what they really need, but this is not what I think is going to happen. So it's a very complicated process. That's what I can suggest.
Indeed, Professor, and I think a concern, which is one that you have rightly raised, is whether or not Somalians will in fact buy into whatever outcome comes out of these indirect elections. I mean, when I think about South Africa's own history and the path to the country's own democracy, citizen participation was so crucial and so important to ensuring the credibility not only of the Constitution but also of whichever government emerged from that election. So are we talking about Somalia needing to go through something similar where, each and every single Somalian is included in the conversation around what the future Somalia in fact looks like?
Yes, I think a very good question. If we still have a clan system, that system is still operating. And if you also still have divisions, and if you still have also conflicts, like at the same time as this election is going on, there's a kind of state of emergency declared, because there is the Al-Shabaab war also taking place in Mogadishu and in the southern part of the Somalia and the central part of Somalia. It's only in the northern part that there's no, the conflict is not that high. When you have still conflict going on, you have still clans, and you also have a division of Somaliland with the colonial time. There is the French had the French Somaliland, the Italian Somaliland, the British Somaliland, and then those from the British say they are better than the other one. They don't. There's no unity among them. So when you have all these divisions, and then now external actors also involved. In other words, on this election, when the previous president postponed it, and he said he wanted to use a decree to make sure that he creates a system where to create some kind of regular, because there's war going on with Al-Shabaab, and so he says he needs a strong, like a dictatorial type thing. After the 4th election, he couldn't continue it. When this happened, because Somalia, although Somalia has a lot of resources, it depends a lot on foreign aid. And even so the International Monetary Fund and others say they are not going to continue to fund if the election is postponed. And so the election has to be made. So this election time is not even determined by the people of Somalia. It is determined by external actors who say that over 60% of what they do as aid to Somalia will not be given unless they do the election. So is this normal or not? So with all these conflicts, you see, with all these external and internal problems, what does it mean to have this election? Will the election really generate an outcome that will make a big difference from all the previous ones? Remember, the country has not had really suffered a lot, for many, many years. There's a dictatorship, a military, coup d'etats and things like that is what has been happening. So it's in the whole area, different, even the regional wars and so on. Even now recently, remember there is a mission there, the Africa Union, and the forces of Burundi were also killed. There were people that were killed also. So you have a very complicated situation. My worry is that will this election bring any difference? If it does bring difference, then of course it would be good for Somalia. We would like the country and the people not suffer.
Right.
But the way it's happening, I don't think it's going to bring any major difference to remove the conflicts, to remove the war from Al-Shabaab and the clan divisions, the real representation of the people. So I don't see it as an election. I call it selection.
Professor, that is the million-dollar question, whether or not these elections will in fact make a difference, a notable difference in the trajectory of Somalia. Something else that is likely to have an important impact on these indirect elections is, of course, the constitution, Professor, of those who are participating. We have 39 presidential hopefuls, one of which is a woman. You've already touched on the lines drawn between the different clans. Talk to us about these 39 presidential hopefuls, who they represent, because we know representation is very important. Even if the constituents have not been demarcated thoroughly in terms of legal framework and legislation, these are the 39 individuals that are representing the whole of Somalia. Are they worthy of representing their countrymen? Are they, equal to the task of leading this country into its future?
Yes, they have two houses. One is called the Lower House, and another is called the Upper House, which is the Senate. The Senate number they require about 54. The other one, normally they have about 275. On the Lower House, it's mainly members from the clans and traditional and so on. In the Upper House, definitely there's others are also included. So what you are, and then together they select the president and the prime minister. The problem they have is in the selection, the agreement and disagreement is very complicated. Now you said 39. The key thing is you have the previous presidents are running, the prime minister, the previous ones are running, and the current president is also running. All of them are running, and what you notice is that they were also in conflict. For example, the previous president fired the prime minister, although the previous president elected the prime minister first. So what you have is, I don't know whether this 39 that are selected for both from how can I say to you, from the previous that have been there, and plus also the traditional leaders and so on, whether, except as you say, there's also one woman there they have included, which used to be a foreign minister or something, then I don't know whether the election process is actually really representative of all, that this 39 actually represents the people of Somalia. I don't think it's clearly stated, although the numbers are there, there are 39, and there could be some, of course, in the who will be voted and all, there will be issues like that, despite the fact that it may run like that. But I'm just worried that whether or not it will be an outcome that actually legitimately brings an election result that we might call democratic. I have a worry. That's all I can say.
Yeah. Professor, before we let you go, and very quickly, I mean, you've mentioned that these elections are happening against the backdrop of immense international pressure from international funders threatening to, withdraw their funding if these elections don't go ahead. We know that Somalia is also a country that is experiencing a lot of, insecurity, given the instability and various attacks from Al-Shabaab, threats from, Islamist extremism. The question that I'm asking you before we part ways is whether or not you think that Somalia will one day enjoy universal suffrage and see one Somalian per voter come and cast their ballot in this instance.
I think my strong suggestion is that if you just leave it, all the problems to each country, each country has its own challenges and its own problems. That's why do we have SADC? Why do we have ECOWAS? Why do you have IGAD, Maghreb, all these places, Central African Republic, all the Central African areas and so on? We have all these regional groupings, and we also have the Africa Union. Why don't the system be created across Africa, for all of Africa? In other words, we also have countries like South Africa, Botswana, so a few of the countries that run elections by making, at least in terms of the formal thing, there may be issues in all places, but formally, at least they are what can you say? South Africa and Botswana, they run elections.
Right.
It was one vote, one person, one vote type thing. So is there a system that could be created across Africa where even there has to be? Unless we do it like that, internally, if you allow it to do it with Somalia, it's not going to work. It's made very, very difficult, I think. My worry is that this election now will not bring again stability and peace and security for the people of Somalia. The only way to bring it is we need, and as an African Union, we need to create a strong commission, an electoral commission, all right, for election commission, a democratic type collection, a representative commission, justice commission, solidarity commission, that brings the right of the people to be respected above all else.
All right.
Like that is what we need. If that doesn't happen, Somalia itself will not solve it. The whole of Africa should get engaged. Africa must really be really active now. We must have agency, our own identity, and our own history. All this, we should really value it and take action now.
Right.
Use this Somali thing as a way to draw lessons for us. How could we actually also learn from it? From this Somali experience, let Africa find a solution.
All right,
That's
Professor, thank you so much. We are going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much. That's Professor Mamo Muchi, a Pan-African scholar with TUT.